Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Monday, August 19th. This is episode 360 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me. For those tuning in on YouTube, make sure to please like and subscribe. Appreciate all of your support. As always, today we have another New York Jets training camp practice to recap after their joint practice on Thursday in Charlotte. Then they had a preseason game on Saturday, of course, against the Panthers on the road. They were back at One Jets Drive, back at Florham Park this afternoon, or this morning, I should say, for training camp day number 16. And we will recap and give you all of my takeaways from today's practice. Wasn't exactly a good day for the offense. One of the worst practices, probably the worst practice of the summer today for the offense. Not even that the defense was that dominant. It was just the offense was off with a lot of miscommunications. There was some drops. There was just some bad throws. Definitely out of sync this afternoon out at One Jets Drive. So hopefully the Jets can clean that up here the rest of the week before they conclude training camp at the end of this week. And, of course, put a bow on the preseason on Saturday night at MetLife against the Giants. Now, before we get into that, let me tell you about our podcast partners, starting with our friends over at SeatGeek. SeatGeek, as you all know, is an app that delivers tickets from all over the internet and puts it into one spot to make it easier for you, the buyer. What makes SeatGeek so great is they rate each ticket on a scale from 1 to 10, so you know what type of deal you are getting on your tickets. Look for the green dots on the seating chart. Those are the good deals. Those are the tickets you want to purchase. Plus, my viewers, use promo code BUBSONSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Click the SeatGeek link in the description down below to download the SeatGeek app. And at checkout, again, that is promo code BUBSONSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Also, my friends over at Huga House, you see me wearing my Huga House hat right now. If you want the hat I'm wearing or any of the hats Aaron Rodgers wears all the time, use promo code BUBS for 15% off any purchase at Huga House. Click the Huga House link in the description down below. That'll take you to the Huga House store where you can shop from a wide range of vintage-inspired hats. And if you want to get some of the same swag that QB1 Aaron Rodgers rocks all the time, use promo code BUBS for 15% off. All right, now into today's episode and today's practice. Day number 16 for the New York Jets this afternoon out at One Jets Drive. And it was a rough day for the offense. Look, if you're a Jet fan panicking or worried over one day of practice in August, you have to pump the brakes. There's going to be good days. There's going to be bad days. There's been days where the offense dominates. There's been days where the defense has won. Today was one of those days, probably the worst day, if we're being honest, of practice for the offense, where just a couple days ago, last week, you felt like they probably had their best day of offense, where they started slow but finished strong. Rodgers found Garrett Wilson twice, I believe, on that day through like 3-something touchdowns. There was a practice about a week ago now as well, where Rodgers had, I believe it was like 5 touchdown passes or something along that. I'd have to look back on my notes exactly. So there's going to be days where the offense wins. There's going to be days where the defense wins. Today really wasn't, obviously the defense won the day, although it didn't really feel like that. It was more so just the offense lost the day because of how bad they were. And there's not really a ton that needs to be said from an offensive perspective or a defensive perspective at that, because there wasn't a whole lot of action. Rodgers finished the day 11 of 27 with an interception. He had a stretch of plays where he had 5 straight incompletions during the team drills, and he also had an 11-on-11 period where he went 1 of 7. So a very rough day for Rodgers. Saw a little bit of pressure. There was a lot of miscommunication. Of course, a ton of incompletions. Rodgers total today got sacked, would have been sacked twice, and saw a little bit more pressure. Jermaine Johnson got a pressure on him. So it wasn't, you probably could say, either the best day for the offensive line for that matter as well. Now, there was one highlight today, and it came from Aaron Rodgers to Garrett Wilson. A very, very nice sidearm throw through C.J. Mosley against Sauce Gardner, threaded the needle through Mosley and Sauce. Garrett Wilson went and grabbed it. about 10 yards, but a really nice sidearm throw from Aaron Rodgers. That was probably the highlight of today's practice for the offense. Rodgers was also able to get a completion to Kenny Yeboah, who made a really nice play on the ball. Wasn't the best throw from Rodgers, but Yeboah kind of adjusted, went down to the ground and got it. So credit to Yeboah there, who, of course, is kind of fighting there depth-wise. I would assume he probably, makes it, or potentially makes it, or obviously as looks right now as the third tight end, with Kuntz most likely being the odd man out there in that room behind Ruckert, and of course Conklin leading the way. So those were the main two highlights from Rodgers. But other than that, again, a lot of miscommunication. There was a lot of pressure, tons of incompletions. There was a couple stretches where it just felt like they were throwing balls away, kind of taking. There was just balls that Rodgers was throwing where nobody was in the area. Seemed like there was kind of a disconnect a little bit between some of the receivers and the quarterbacks today. So all around, just not a very strong day for the offense. Saleh did say he hinted towards the fact that during one of the team drills, I think it was during the 4-minute drill, he said in his post-practice press conference that they were trying to work on something or trying something new. They were doing some different things on offense that they really haven't done yet this camp. It seemed like he kind of hinted towards that. So I don't know if that's him just trying to, come up with not so much an excuse, but try and come up with a reason as to why the offense struggled so much today, or if that was actually true. But if it was true, I guess you can understand why there were some struggles if they were trying to add a new wrinkle or add something new or trying something new on the offense that obviously wasn't really working. Now, he did, of course, say that it was a top 5 defense on the other side of the football, and that's, of course, why you saw some of the struggles. So that's about it from the offense perspective. I mean, there's not much else to say other than it was a really, really bad day, by far the worst of camp. Wide receiver perspective, tight end perspective, talk about Garrett Wilson. He even on a rough day, he still found a way to have a couple nice receptions from Rodgers this afternoon. There was an incompletion where him and Rodgers on a 4th down and 5 during the drive the field drill. Rodgers looked to Garrett. It was incomplete. That was towards the end of practice, and then the offense was actually given another chance after that to try and convert. They didn't. So pretty much everything the offense touched just did not work this afternoon. Talked about Yeboah a little bit early on. And as for the defense, again, not a ton of highlights defensively. It was more so just the offense shooting themselves in the foot, hurting themselves. But Will McDonald did shine today. It was a very good day for Will McDonald. And Will McDonald has put together a strong camp the last couple weeks. It feels like going back to the Washington Commanders joint practice 2 weeks ago now. It feels like ever since that joint practice, he has found something in his game or found a little bit of consistency where he's been a factor here over the last 2 weeks. Even going back to that Washington Commanders preseason game, despite him only having 11 snaps and not doing a ton in those 11 snaps, he did have the one nice rep against the Commanders in that game where he got to the quarterback. Unfortunately, it was called for a roughing the passer. Whether or not you agree with the call or not, either way, he was able to get to the quarterback, which was a positive, utilized his spin move. Didn't do a whole lot with the next 10 snaps that he had, but was still able to get to the quarterback. And that's a positive, considering he at times has had a bumpy camp where there's days where you like what you see from him, and there's days where he's just getting manhandled and just getting pretty much just stronger offensive linemen, stronger tackles are just getting the better of him at points. So it's been good to see him build up some consistency. Had a pretty good practice against the Carolina Panthers. Was especially impressed with some of his individual drills reps during the joint practice, and then went out there in the actual game and had a sack. And in today, he had 2 what would be sacks on Aaron Rodgers in a game. So 2 sacks for Will McDonald. He shined today. And really, over the last 2 weeks, he's been very, very good for this defense. And that's got to be a positive, with Hassan Reddick requesting the trade, not really knowing what's going to happen with him here in the coming weeks. Whether or not he shows up the week of the Niners game and says, hey, I'm here, I'm ready to go. Whether or not he shows up at all, either way, McDonald's going to need to play a big role. So building some positive momentum going to the regular season, I think, is a good thing for the Jets and, of course, McDonald himself. You look at the secondary, Tony Adams had an interception this afternoon. To my count, I believe that was the second of camp for Adams. 1 or 2 interceptions this training camp. Chuck Clark's also, I believe, has had 2 interceptions this camp. So really, I think you've got to walk away here from this final week of camp, and you've got to walk away from training camp as a whole. We went into training camp wondering what the Jets safety room would look like, what it would kind of transform into, because I think a lot of us, similar to the way we went into it, maybe with a couple other positions, but specifically the safety room, you were kind of curious of see what it looks like in camp. And if it doesn't look good or it looks like it's struggling, whatever, then you can go out and get a Justin Simmons. Then you can go out and get maybe a Quandre Diggs. So I don't think many fans, myself included a little bit, I still wanted to see this safety room in action. I still wanted to see Chuck Clark, of course, in action after tearing his ACL last year in OTAs and missing the entirety of the season. I think you've got to have a lot of confidence in what this safety group, this safety pair, and Tony Adams and Chuck Clark has shown you so far this camp. And obviously Justin Simmons now with Atlanta. Quandre Diggs also found a new home in Tennessee. So both those guys, of course, are off the board. So the Jets are all in on this group, and I think you've got to be really proud, really happy with what you've seen, especially from Chuck Clark, of course, who's a guy that I think a lot of us wanted to see health-wise how he looks, and he looked very good. Tackling's been great. I think his coverage ability has been a little bit more impressive than myself personally probably would have even expected to see out of him. So a very good summer as we come to a close here from Tony Adams and Chuck Clark, and just a very good camp, and should have a lot more confidence in the safety room than is it going to light up the world? Is it going to be the NFL's best safety room? No, but is it going to be solid? Is it going to be an upgrade over what the Jets have probably had the last couple seasons? Yeah, because Chuck Clark's really good. He's a Swiss Army knife. The Jets are going to be able to use him in so many different ways, and Tony Adams is only getting better. And here's a clip I wanted to share too of Tony Adams on his thought process going into the season and how confident he is that he could take another jump.
I think I'm playing a lot faster. I think the game has slowed down for me. I think a year ago, I think I'm a lot more confident too. You're going to see a lot more plays from me this year, for sure. For sure.
So it feels he's a lot faster. Game has slowed down for him. And that's a big deal too from a coverage perspective as well for Tony Adams, which I think has been pretty impressive so far this camp. So those are mainly practice notes. Again, not a ton today. Just not a ton of highlights, not a ton really to discuss other than the offense was really bad. And you had a couple of those highlights from Will McDonald and Tony Adams. Now, there is some stuff we'll discuss here with the injury report and a roster update. So here's the injury report, and then we'll get into a roster update. So we'll start with Malik Taylor. He was unfortunately placed on season-ending IR yesterday. So his season is over. Was putting together a strong camp prior to his injury, and now his season's done. Looked like a guy that could potentially make the 53, could potentially make his way onto the 53 with that depth receiver competition. So unfortunate for him. And the corresponding move to that was the New York Jets signed UFL standout defensive lineman Jalen Twyman. So he'll get an opportunity, I guess, here the last week as just kind of defensive line depth there. Now, other injury report notes, guys that practice, all that stuff. Mike Williams is still out of team drills. He's still working in individuals, was on the bike today, so he's still working his way back. Jarek Bernard-Converse dealing with a groin, and Isaiah Oliver, his injury hasn't been released, so for now undisclosed, are both out for the remainder of camp. But Saleh said today they should both be ready for week 1. So a little bit unfortunate there for Jarek Bernard-Converse. He's had a very, very strong training camp from making the full-time move over to cornerback from safety. Definitely disappointing a little bit to see him go down here. You would have liked to see him out there again in another preseason game this week, another opportunity to join practice this week, but he'll be out and back by week 1 is what Saleh said today. Of course, injured that groin in the Panthers game, which caused him to leave early. And Leki Fotu's another guy that's also out for the rest of camp. Probably should be ready as well for week 1. Saleh didn't say specifically, but I would imagine he's in the same boat as Oliver and JBC. He's dealing with a hamstring, so he's also out for the remainder of camp. Irv Charles dealing with a hip. Could return soon. Feels like something that is kind of day to day, could return tomorrow, could return Wednesday. Doesn't seem like anything major there. And Michael Carter II is still day to day. Saleh said they feel like they might get him back more towards the end of the week. So keep an eye on that, but still labeled him as day to day here as the rest of the week goes on. That's something to keep an eye on. Ruckert also to return to practice today, returned to individual and team drills, was wearing a red non-contact jersey. Of course, he's coming back from the concussion that has sidelined him for about the last week and a half now. So he was back, which is good to see. And this isn't really an injury note, but Tyron Smith was participating in team drills today. So we know how the Jets have kind of limited his usage this camp, which has been smart, of course, to try and keep him as healthy as possible. He was out there in team drills this afternoon. Of course, there's days where he's out there, days where he isn't. That's not really an injury report, but wanted to mention that he was out there today. So that's primarily your injury report. And of course, your one roster move was signing UFL standout Jalen Twyman in the corresponding move to Malik Taylor being placed on season-ending IR. So that'll do it. That's pretty much it for this episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below on day number 16 of New York Jets training camp, your biggest takeaways, and all that good stuff as we get closer and closer to training camp concluding and the regular season right around the corner. So as always, until next time, hope you enjoyed it, and JETS, 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 Jets.